Is Amazon a monopoly? Well, it's not really an easy question to answer. First, you have to understand what the core tenet of Jeff Bezos' business philosophy is: patience. Go back to the original letter that Jeff Bezos wrote investors in 1997. He wrote that investors to Amazon shouldn't expect Amazon to operate like most companies, because Amazon wouldn't judge itself by short-term profits, the thing that almost every other company cares about, only the long term. And Bezos and Amazon stayed true to that. Its first few years, Amazon barely made a profit. It invested billions of dollars back into the business, and it just kept growing and growing and growing and growing. And now that patience has paid off with incredible profits over the last few years. We all know on some level what a monopoly is. We've played the game. But in the context of antitrust law, it's a specific thing. It's meant to stop a company from forming that can dominate the market in such a way that competition is impossible. Those who do not think Amazon is a monopoly say that because Amazon is offering its customers lower prices, it can't possibly be an antitrust case. Those low prices are a benefit to consumer welfare, and it would be impossible to regulate exactly how low is too low for prices.
The lodestar of antitrust enforcement is, how are consumers affected? Do consumers pay more? Do they have less choice? Then it's time for the antitrust cops to get on the beat.
This is David Balto. He worked on antitrust cases for the Justice Department and the FTC for years and is skeptical about Amazon being a monopoly.
When consumers are paying less and have a greater amount of choice, which seems to be the simple message from Amazon's business model, there's not a reason for intense antitrust scrutiny.
But some say that business model is a direct threat to customers. This is Lena Khan. She's a lawyer who has really helped shape the debate around Amazon and antitrust law. To people like her, Amazon's willingness to sustain massive losses isn't just a savvy business move. It's an example of predatory pricing.
So predatory pricing is when a company prices a good below cost and is doing so basically in order to drive out its competitors so that it is able to kind of enjoy a dominant place in the market.
All of those things are a really high bar for the government to prove, and because of that, a successful case on predatory pricing hasn't been litigated in decades.
That's not for a lack of will. We certainly at the FTC and the Clinton administration had predatory pricing investigations. But at the end of the day, you have to convince yourself that consumers would be better off if you stop these practices. And that's like looking for a unicorn.
But to those who do think Amazon right now is acting as a monopoly, the government's view of predatory pricing is outdated.
The reality is, with tech companies, you have a marketplace that is winner take all. So if you're a Facebook or an Amazon or a Google, your main goal is to try and acquire as many users as possible at the very earliest stages, because once you have a lot of users, it's going to be much more difficult for rivals to divert users away from you. And so in that scenario, predatory pricing actually becomes very rational.
It's important to note that the question of predatory pricing is really only one of the questions surrounding Amazon. There are also concerns about just how large Amazon has become as a business.
So in addition to being an online retailer, it also is a huge content producer, is a book publisher, it has a huge cloud computing service. The fact that Amazon is involved in all these different lines of business positions it to use its dominance in the online space in order to benefit its other lines of businesses. And I think that's something that's really problematic.
What we want from a consumer's perspective is for those people who provide services for us to use the bargaining leverage of having all those customers to lower costs as much as possible. And that's fundamentally what Amazon has done.
So whether Amazon has an unfair advantage over its competitors, whether it's a monopoly, all those things are an open debate. But what is not a debate is right now, Amazon is winning.